Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reedy with Future Pastimes, and this is Yes and Improv, which is my YouTube show where I talk about all things improv, and that would be performance improvisation, improvisational comedy, which I've been doing since I was in high school in the 1980s, and in various parts of the country. I've done it as well in other countries, which is pretty exciting for me, I guess. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about Comedy Royale, which is a format for doing improvised comedy that I developed several years ago when I was doing improv with my troupe D Cup. And my guest today is Matt Hartman, who is a good friend of mine that I've known since what, 2002, 2000, yeah,
Yeah,
just about
2002,
then.
yeah.
We did improv with Comedy Sports in DC for several years. He was also a member of D Cup, which was my troupe that did all manner of bizarre shows. And Comedy Royale was one of them. But Matt has moved back to his native Pittsburgh, and he is in good standing with a comedy theater there called the Arcade Theater. And one of many shows that they do is the Comedy Royale show, and they are. It's been done in a few cities, so I know that Richmond has done a Comedy Royale show on a couple of occasions, and many years ago, Just the Funny in Miami did at least one Royale show. We did a show with them at the Miami Improv Festival. It was me and Jim Doyle and Spencer Hum and a couple of the Just the Funny guys from Miami, and it was a lot of fun. And afterwards, they did the show as well. But it's an open source format. So the idea is that anybody can do it, and it's free. I don't charge any royalties. There's no comedy royalty associated with the format. So Matt and I are going to talk a little bit about the format, and we'll talk about how it has evolved in Pittsburgh at the Arcade. And yeah, we'll talk about it. I found my original document. I had done a Word doc when I was brainstorming what it was going to be and how the format worked, and we'll take a look at that. I'll show that off, and Matt and I can talk about it, and then we can talk about how, like I said, how it's evolved. So yeah, I mean, Matt, what was your first memory of the Royale? Because I know we did it at D Cup. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about what is it.
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly where we did the show. I remember doing it at least once, probably twice or three times. Um, and it being at it was some venue, it was some remote show type thing. Well, it wasn't at a particular theater, as I recall. It was at like a corporate event, maybe, or something along those lines. And it was it was something different and new because it had such a small cast of character. There were only four performers and a host, which for me was different from other kind of competitive. I guess we haven't mentioned yet. It's a competitive format, and so only having four performers was kind of different, and I really liked it, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and it also gave you the chance because of the way it's formatted to play with everybody that was in the show. So you weren't like on one team and you could only be with those players, and or you were competing against another team. Like you were competing as individuals, but you were also working with everybody at different times throughout the show. And I thought that that was really fun.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I do remember that show. And then I know that we later on we took it to Charleston, South
Mm.
Carolina, and which was one of the funniest implementations. We didn't even have a host; it was just the four of us doing. We did a couple of different shows, but this was one of them. And we were like, yeah, you technically don't need to have a host; anybody can do it. Although I like having a separate host because I feel like it's cleaner. But I'd come up with it. We were part of Comedy Sports, which is a national and to some extent an international phenomenon. At one point, it was in 26 different cities in the U.S. and then a couple of cities overseas, and it was based on theater sports. But it was more focused on the comedy, which is why they called it Comedy Sports. And it was two teams competing against each other with a referee as the host of the show. And in a sort of behind the scenes bit of trivia is that the competition wasn't really real. We would play it up. We're like, oh, the red team against the blue team, and we're going to try to beat them and whatever. But the whole philosophy was we don't really care who wins. We are keeping track of the score and to play up the sports element of it. So a little bit different from like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they say the points don't matter. But the real reason the points don't matter on that show is because when they record a show, they record basically up to 2 hours of content, but they only use 23 minutes of it. So the points wouldn't make any sense at the end of it because you're like, how did Greg Proops get points? I never saw him get any points or whatever it was. So, but here with Royale, we wanted to have it's an actual. I mean, you can do it as a true competition. You can still have that same. I like that supportive. We're playing up the competition, but it doesn't really matter that much as long as the audience is entertained. But one of the phenomenons that would happen occasionally with comedy sports is that a city would say, we don't want to pay the royalty fee or whatever, the licensing fee to do the show. We're going to keep doing the same format. We're going to call it sports comedy, and that's going to fool everybody. And or they would barely change something about it, but it was still the same sort of thing. And I was like, look, if you're gonna stop being part of comedy sports, at least make your format a little bit different. And so that was part of the driving thing. And then I came up with this system that it's not very complicated, but it does lend itself, I think, well to it. So the idea, and as you mentioned, 4 performers, and that's the basic structure. I did come up with a way to do 6 performers, and we'll talk about that as well. But it involved, it was recommended that you use T-shirts with certain symbols and numbers on them. And when Miami did it, they used lanyards. They were like, we're not going to buy T-shirts, and like that's fine, however you want to do it. But each player had a different thing. So one player would have a red square with a number 1 on it. The next one would have a red circle with a number 2. And so everybody has a different combination of things, but what you end up with are 6 teams. You've got a number 1 team of 2 people and a number 2 team, which is the other 2 people. But then you have a circle team, which is a different combination of 2 people versus squares. And then you had a red team and a blue team. So that's what Matt was talking about earlier where you're playing with the other people, is that over the course of the show, you would be playing as team 1. So you would be, the first and third people would be a team doing some improv together. But later on, you'd be working with the red player or the number 1 player or whatever it was. And some things, everyone's doing something at once. And it works with a lot of short form games pretty well. And I had come up with a judging system. We were in comedy sports. It was popular to have the audience get red and blue fly swatters or lights or whatever for 3 people in the audience to be judges. And the system that I come up with, I had made these paddles that Judge 1 was just in charge of red and blue, and Judge 2 was just in charge of numeral 1 and 2, and then the third judge was just circle and square. And so what you would do is, if you're like, all right, I award the points to the red team, then you're giving those 2 players points, but later on, you might be awarding points to the number 1 team, and so that 1 player now has 10 points or whatever it is, and that's how it kind of worked out. So this is what I'm showing here for those watching. This is my original document that I'd come up with explaining how this worked out, and it walks you through a sample show, and it also shows you how it's scored. And I envisioned some kind of scoreboard that had all these things on there so that you could track it along. We never, when I was doing the show, we never had anything. We just we'll remember what the score is. So it didn't quite work out. But at the arcade, you guys have come up with a very nice visual way of displaying it. And I should point out that being in Pittsburgh, you're not using red and blue, and it was some genius there and said, let's go with black and gold, which, I think is great. And, if you look at what Richmond did, they were going with purple and it looks like gray, which I'm sure means something to them. It means nothing to me. But so, yeah, that's the format. And what the thing I think that helps to foster good sportsmanship is that you are going to be on everybody's team at some point. And so that's why it technically can be an actual competitive format. Because the one quibble that people had about competitive improv is that you get somebody trying to steamroll everybody else, and I guess that could still happen, but I think it makes it easier to avoid that a little bit. And so, and yeah, for me, when I host it, I also say, look, one of the things I want you to judge is how well do the players work with the other people, and how much do they make them look good. You should factor that in. And so there's ways to help foster the sportsmanship. But I always envisioned it as a sort of thing where when we were doing it in DC, I was like, I'd love one day to be able to to reach out to one of the other improv troops to say, like, let's call up WIT, which is another big improv troupe in the DC area, and say, send one of your performers over and mix them in with us. I was like, I'd love to get. At one point, there were like 8 different improv troops in the DC area. I was like, let's get a bunch from everybody else. But you also have done something similar. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt, and talk a little bit about how it got started at the arcade and how it evolved. By all means, jump in.
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the things that when I came to Pittsburgh, I was looking to see what was the scene like here, what type of improv was going on around here, because I'd been doing improv for about 10 years down in DC. I moved back here in 2013, and I was looking for stuff to do, and I found the Arcade Comedy Theater. They had just opened earlier that year, and I went out and auditioned to be on some of their house teams and things like that. And about a year into that, maybe a little less than a year into that, I reached out to you, Jack, and I said, hey, this competitive thing would go real well here. Pittsburgh's a sports town. They love sports. I don't think I can start a comedy sports here. I don't have the capital to do that, nor the time, nor the resources, or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
But doing something like Comedy Royale would be great. And can I use this here? And you were very open to that idea. So in April of 2014, we did our first Comedy Royale show here, and yeah, we made some changes. We changed the colors, like you said, to black and gold because I thought, well, that just makes sense because black and gold, all the sports teams in Pittsburgh are black and gold, so let's just do that. I started by making T-shirts. So what I did was I went out and bought like those kind of print them and then you can iron them on type of deals.
Yeah.
And I made T-shirts, and I made a whole set of T-shirts so that I had small, medium, large, extra large, and 2X for every shape, color, and number. Because I knew that I was going to be having a bunch of different people do this. I didn't want them to have to buy their own shirt. I wanted to have a very low barrier of entry. So I made all these shirts, and they were fine, but after one washing, they would start to fade, and they looked kind of crappy. So I found TeePublic, which is a place where you can design your own T-shirt essentially, and then you basically have them for sale, right? So their podcasts have them and all sorts of things like that. So I just made the designs on there, put the designs onto those shirts, and then had them, sent to me. But again, I had them all the same. I had a whole set made. And I also had host shirts made that if you can see the video, if you can see me at all, you can see there's a Comedy Royale logo on the host shirt. So that way the host has something that they are wearing as well, and everybody's got a T-shirt on them. It started with white T-shirts with the logos on them. I've since switched. I don't remember exactly when I made this choice, but I switched to having the T-shirts be the color.
Yeah.
So they're black T-shirts and gold T-shirts, and then they have either and they might all be in white lettering, but they pop a lot better. They look a lot better on stage than the white T-shirts did.
Yeah. So I got a picture up from the article in Pittsburgh from Amanda Myers, and it's you looking confused, but you're standing in front of 4 performers, so 2 black shirts, 2 gold shirts, and you can see the numbers and you can see the shapes on there as well as the scoreboard. So it's a great look. It looks really sharp and it's pretty eye popping and compelling, I'd say.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about what I was able to put together was it's a very produced show, which a lot of the shows at Arcade, especially early on, were not very produced. They were just, people got up and they did long form or they did short form improv and they just did a show and there was no, uniform to it. There was no,
No spectacle and
yeah,
professional,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this we had, and I mean, look, I had done comedy sports for years, so I saw what worked there and used a lot of that. So we had like music play, like stadium music playing when people came in, right? So that kind of get the spirit up and going. We put somebody in the booth that we call Mr. Microphone, and that is a person who does all of our like announcements, calls the people in. They enter the stage. We had a comedy royale theme written and produced by a local musician and an improv performer here. Who I said, hey, can I pay you to make a theme for Comedy Royale? And he was like, sure. So we have an actual theme that plays at the beginning, um, and the graphics. A lot of the original design was done by you, Jack, and then I kind of handed that off to a great guy here named Mike Rubino, who was one of the founders of the arcade, who also does a lot of graphic design, and said, hey, can you add some metallic to this or black and gold, to the logo, and he put the little arcade logo in the bottom of it, and he's also the one who designed. He and a gentleman named Aaron Tarnow designed the scoreboard that we have as well. So the scoreboard is actually set up through a program where um, they can go in and type the names in, and then somebody keeps score the entire time from the booth for us as well. There are actually two different scoreboards. There's one for upstairs theater, which is just kind of a like a strip, like a row, just that goes. It's very thin, and then there's like a larger scoreboard that fills like an entire screen for a downstairs theater where there's more space. Um, but yeah, so we put that into it. We have the music that plays. We have the banter between me and Mr. Microphone. And what I would do is I would bring people in that had done short form improv before, and I had all kinds of different people take part in this show. And I'm looking right now I kept like a roster because I wanted to keep everybody's t-shirt size. And I also kept uh, a record of who won every match as well, just because I wanted to see. I thought that would be interesting.
Yeah. Some
So
trend
we've
analysis.
had, yeah, exactly. So we've had 77 different performers do Comedy Royale over the past 2 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and many of those people have done it more than once. And what I started doing, I don't know, a few years back was if you won the match, you were invited back to do the next month because it was a monthly show. And up until the pandemic, it was a monthly show. So from April of 2014 until essentially we had a show the weekend that everything shut down
Yeah.
in 2020. So that show was canceled. So I guess February of 2020 was our last regular monthly show, and we've done a couple since we've come back. We did a really fun Christmas show last year where it was red versus green. We had new T-shirts printed up, and we did all like holiday themed games. And at one point, we did like a Santa game, and it was crazy. We also did a fundraiser for during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We did where everybody had pink shirts, and we did I think it was pink versus white, maybe. I'm trying to remember what the other color was, but anyway, we did that. We did as you mentioned, there was a 6-person version where the fourth variable, I believe, was male versus female, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't that
yeah.
always that?
That was the idea. It
So
was like, hey, we can do a battle of the sexes thing, which is,
right,
now it's like, well, that feels very 20th century, so maybe it's
yeah,
not. But there, you could easily do like it's bold versus italics or whatever. There's
right,
ways, but in the 6-person format, I mean, it was. I actually was there for the first time that you did it, and along with our mutual
The
friend
only time.
Austin Bragg. Yeah, I would love to come back, but yeah, so just invite me. But
No,
yeah,
no, no. I'm saying that was the only time we did
yeah.
that format.
So, but
It was
you know, we had Austin and I had a great time. We thought that it essentially worked, but it is a different. It has a different feel to it. It is
yeah,
there's those two extra people. You're like, all right, there's a lot more going on here, and so yeah, it's a very different thing. So if somebody's thinking about doing this, if you've got you're like, all right, we have a pretty big troop, and we want to be able to feature more than just 4 or 5 players if you have a host. The six-player format does work, but the 4-1 is pretty tight. I prefer the
yeah.
4 anyway, so it's just more manageable.
Yeah, I agree, and we actually got some blowback on the Battle of the Sexes part of it even then. We did it on Valentine's weekend because I thought that would be a good time to do a Battle
That
of the
seems
Sexes,
like that's the
and
only good time to even try it.
yeah, exactly. And still, we got some people were not particularly pleased by it. And the other thing I have to say is you were mentioning before how it can be an actual competition, and I will be honest, I don't sell it to the performers that way, because performers, for those who have not performed and not been around performers have some very sensitive egos, as it turns out, and and you are telling a comedian, hey, we're going to decide by the end of this who wins. But what they hear in their mind is, oh, we're going to find out who's the funniest, and we're going to find out who's not funny. And if I don't get enough points, I'm not funny. And you can't tell somebody enough that that's not the case,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
have the like they just won't buy it. And so uh, we really talk about the fact that, hey, it's a competition. It's the format is to set up like a competition, but we're trying to make each other look good, and we score it differently, I believe, than you originally had intended. We do still do our judges. We have paddles. I actually had ping pong paddles printed that have the shapes and the colors and the numbers on them, which is nice, because they get passed out a lot, and so they stand the test of time, and the battle damage that they receive. But um, we also have, like, so there's a round in the game where it's a guessing game, and one person is guessing, and they essentially are going to get points. So what we also do, and I think you had talked about this in your scoring, so I'm not saying it's totally different, but we also allow the judges to award bonus points to the people who are giving the clues for the person to guess, because otherwise, if it's an actual competition, why would they make it so that the person could guess it? They don't want them to get points, so
Yeah.
they're going to make it impossible, and that would make this show obviously not good to watch and not
Yeah,
good for
I
the
did.
audience.
I did have a bit put some thought into things like that, so we can say, hey, there's just a catch-up round, so the player with the lowest score is going to be able to get a lot of points, but you do have to incentivize the other players. So
Yeah.
there was a system for that, and what's funny is in the original document, when talking about who is the winner, um, what was suggested was that it's going to be a team that wins, not a player, and so
Oh,
you
interesting.
tallying it up
Interesting.
and you're like, all right, looks like the squares are the winners because they have 45 points. And I say you could have one person be a winner. However, we prefer to make it a team win since there are 6 teams involved and helps foster better sportsmanlike conduct. So yeah, I mean, I
Oh,
think it's
that's good.
definitely, yeah. I mean, you and I know after years of comedy sports and knowing what is it that really makes that work. And I think part of it is the way that the format has the teams. If one team does something that that they did a stinky scene, it just didn't work. It's immediately followed up by somebody else doing something different, and if that works out, then everyone forgets about the other thing, and so that's part of it. And then just the other is that comedy sports does behind the scenes foster this. The competition is not real. We are all there to make everybody look good and have a good time. And so we'll play up the rivalry, between the two team captains and whatever. But we do this thing where if, the one team is out there doing a scene, the other team can jump in and assist by offering something like "I'll be furniture," stuff like that,
Right.
and
Right.
then the referee has the discretion to go, "I'm going to give this team an assist point," and for going out there and helping them make look good, and
Yeah.
so that's the sort of thing, and I think your approach is the perfect way to do it. Is just let the players know, hey, this is a from the audience's standpoint, it's a competition between us, but for us, we're a troupe. Doing a show, and we're trying to follow that golden rule of improv: is make everybody else look good is the best approach to team performance. And
Yeah.
so yeah, and I got that. I mean, Austin and I, we came in for that 6-player show. We didn't really know any of the other performers, but we're all on the same page, and we all had the same objective, which was put on a good show for the audience and make everybody else look good. And so we all had a good time doing it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the battle of the sexes. Let's change that to something else, because
Yeah.
gender's not
Doesn't work.
binary or whatever you want to say. So yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
exactly.
So one of the other things that we've done, and this started in 2015, I believe. So the second year that we were doing this is we started the Improv Madness tournament.
Yes.
It was a comedy royale tournament, and the way that this, when it reached its peak, it was a 5-week event. So we did weekly shows for 5 weeks, starting usually in February, at the end of February, and we created a bracket. Each of the 4 shows, we put the 4 performers that were in them, and then whoever won in each of the first 4 shows played a final show, which was the Improv Madness finals, and or the championship or whatever we called it, and
The
and
final
they
final
competed, and
four.
whoever won that won. Yeah, exactly, like Final Fours, everything. You can't call it Final Four, you can't call it March Madness because those are all
Exactly.
right, used or copywritten or trademarked or whatever. But anyway, and I got a trophy made, and I would get little plaques made for the other 3 finalists, and we'd have interviews with them that we'd show like up on the video screen. We brought in, there's a guy named Jeff Jimison who does sings the national anthem at most of the Pittsburgh Penguins games. We got him to come and sing the national anthem before the finals one year.
Wow.
We would get celebrity judges, quote unquote, from around Pittsburgh, like people who were Pittsburgh famous, to come and be our judges. So like they were news anchors, or there's this great Pittsburgh documentarian named Rick Seaback, who's now a friend of mine, which blows my mind because I grew up just watching him on TV. But they would come in and they would be our judges, and we would introduce them, and it was a big event. It would sell out every year. It was a lot of fun. It was a really, really great experience. And we had one guy who he made the finals year after year. His name's Jethro Nolan, and he is a fantastic improviser, a great guy. I do a podcast with him. He's very, very funny, and he would make the finals year after year, and he would never win. And his wife also made the finals. She won. He was one of the founders of Arcade. The other Arcade founders would play. They would win. Other people would win. Finally, he won one year, and it was the year that I every year I would get a different trophy. And when this one showed up, it was supposed to be like a cup, like the loving cup, those like big,
Yeah.
like with the 2 handles on it. And it showed up, and it was like tiny, and I had no idea. Like it was fairly inexpensive. I should have known, but it was small, and I was like, well, all right, that's the trophy this year. That's the one he got. And he was just like, what? After my wife at home, she's got this huge. I said, yeah, well, that's what you get, buddy. But congratulations on your win. So yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and we really, really liked doing that. That whole thing, although it was exhausting, which is crazy to me, because I remember back when I started doing comedy sports, we would do 5 shows a week, right? We would be doing Thursday, 2 shows on Friday, 2 shows on Saturday. I guess occasionally we'd even have a Sunday show,
Yeah.
and I'd do them all, and I'd be like, "Yay, this is great, so much fun!" And now I was doing 1 show a week, and I was like, "This is terrible. I can't keep doing this." It really got to be something. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great experience, and people know it, and they come to see it, and a lot of performers are aware of it and things like that too. They want to be in the show. which is great, and it's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, I mean that's great, and I would certainly love to see more and more um, troops or whatever doing the show. If somebody is interested in it and wants to get more information about the format, just reach out to me. That's fine. And the idea was that it was supposed to be totally open source. Like so, if somebody is like, "Hey, I came up with this for the Comedy Royale," it's just like, well, just make it available for everyone. And like I said, I don't charge any kind of a fee or whatever. We in the original document, I was like, what I would love is if people would like on a program or on your website, you just say that this was a format created by Jack Rita and D Cup, and that's just because really what I want is eventually. Someone to make a statue of me somewhere. That's what I'm
Oh,
really after, and I feel like, all right,
what you looking
if I
for?
can get my name out there more and more, that's more likely to happen. So,
Sure,
yeah, Herndon,
sure.
we like, Herndon's favorite son, Jack Rita. Here's a statue. It's replacing this Confederate general. It's like, no, there's no Confederate general statues in Herndon, um, but if there were, I would want to replace it with me riding a horse. So
Sure, that makes
that's what I'm
total sense.
hoping for. And but yeah, even that
I picture you
I
all the
don't
time.
enforce it, so it doesn't really matter. I just like for me the biggest thing is I like to see if someone's doing improv, especially if they're doing short form improv, that it be good. And I think it's a pretty good format. And it started off as a relatively you're like, all right, you're just doing a half hour, 40-minute show. Here you go, here you go. But we've done it like it was like Comedy Sports is like a 90-minute show and it has an intermission. And it's like we can totally do that with the Royale. It's easy enough to do, and in with the couple of other people who have done the show, I've consulted with them on like here's a good approach to the format. But a lot of it is like, what do you want to do? And there's probably ways to fit that in there and to play around with the format itself. So there's no real strict rules, but it's pretty easy for the audience to get. They're like, okay, I get it. 6 teams, and when you come on and explain it, it's going to be 6 teams, and you're like, it's only 4 people. It's like, well, pay attention because here's how it works, and they go, oh yeah, look at that, that's kind of fun. So yeah, it does have its own identity, and it does work. It's a nice the term we like to use is envelope. How do you present a show of a bunch of short form games? And I hate it when it's just kind of a sloppy, lazy, like, all right, we're just gonna do here's our next one, and now we're gonna do this one, and it's like, okay, let's add some showmanship to this in some way. And so I think that the Royale format helps lend itself to doing that, and what you guys have done with it, I think, is really great. That's like the best case scenario where you've got a lot more spectacle. You've got the lights and the music. You've got this great scoreboard, and you've got yeah. Now you've got celebrities in there. I love the bracketed tournament approach. I think that's great as well. And yeah, it's a fun show, and it is fun to as a performer you're really getting to be involved in so much of the show. And so there's not a lot of downtime. There's not a lot of like, well, now I'm sitting out for the next 20 minutes. It's like you're in there and you're getting to work with everybody else in pretty equal measures. So for me, it's always been a fun show to do as well as one to watch.
Yeah, and people, I will say, performer wise, when you're like, okay, so even people that have done short form, and you're explaining, okay, this is this, and what games we're gonna play, and you go over beforehand, and you put the lineup together before the show starts. A lot of times they're like, so what do I have to remember? Nothing. I'm gonna the host is gonna tell you what you're playing next. Oh, really? Oh, that's great. People are like that's such a weight off my shoulders that I don't have to remember, and I don't have to jump up and explain a game, and I don't have to do whatever, and I think the audience really likes that consistent host thing too. Like it gives them a touch point.
Yeah.
It gives them like a person who's kind of just relating straight to them and things like that. Not that the performers can't do that also, but I think that the host aspect of it, it moves the show along. It connects the show together. Just like the referee did in comedy sports. I think it really is a nice thing to have. So I definitely do that. When we do it, we always have a host, even if it's usually me. Usually I'm hosting, but every now and again I'll talk somebody else into doing it, and I'll get to play. So
Yeah, I'm happy to host it anytime you want, Hartman. Just give me at least 6 hours notice. Because
all right, yeah, that's
it'll
easy
take
enough.
me about
I know,
5 hours to drive there, but I'll stop along the way to pee and
yeah,
get some soda. So I need
sure,
that
sure, yeah.
buffer.
Now we don't currently have any scheduled right now.
Whatever. All
My
right,
guess is,
whatever, Matt. If you don't want me,
well,
just say so. I'm
no, I'm
happy.
trying to. So unfortunately, after the pandemic, things have been a little rough for arcade comedy theater. So if you want to support local live comedy and you're in Pittsburgh, go see some shows or send them a couple bucks or something, because it for like all performing spaces, it's been pretty tough pandemic on, and so we haven't gotten back into that monthly routine. We're not a monthly show yet. We did 2 shows, 3 shows this year. My guess is we won't have any more in 2024. If we do, maybe it'll be December. But hopefully 2025 we'll get some more on the calendar, and we'll be doing some more.
Yeah,
So
it is
if
a
folks
it is
are
a
looking
really
for it,
nice space. So I've done shows there, I think, on 3 occasions, and
yeah.
yeah, it's just been it's in a good location. It's a nice space. And everybody there that we've had the privilege of working with has been great. So we really, except for that Jethro guy, we didn't really care for him too much. But everybody else we thought was really wonderful. And no, it's great. I highly recommend it. I'm going to put some links up in the description. So put a link up to the arcade theater, and also to something about your podcast, so that you can get
Oh, great.
maybe 3, maybe 4 more subscribers.
Oh my gosh, you're
Yeah.
gonna double our listenership? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, yeah, I'm over 2,000 subscribers now, so I've got some
What?
cachet, and at
I
least
love it, man.
0.1% of them might be interested in the Drunkard's Walk. So, yeah, check that out. And yeah, and if you're watching, if you want, well, and so that's the improv part of the channel. If this was board game related, and if it were Dune related, so you might want to think about doing like a Dune themed comedy Royale show, and and I don't know that we can get a still suit on you, and then everyone else can just wear their normal things. Maybe we have some Atreides and Harkonnen symbols on there. It's food for thought. Think about that, because I think there's an
I
audience
will.
for it. And
I'll think it through.
yeah, so but yeah, if people have questions, let me know, and I'm happy to answer them. And I can send you the original document, or I can probably whip up something that's a little more recent, because I wrote that in like 2005 or something like that. It's like, because 2006 we had done one before, but 2006 is when we did it in Miami. We took D Cup down there to do chicken shows, and the first night that we were there, they were like, "Yeah, bring your Royale show." We did that, and they were like, "That was a lot of fun." So that was why they did it a couple of times themselves. But yeah, it's a free format, so go check it out. And yeah, Matt, I want to thank you for chatting. So I'm gonna have you back, because we've got plenty of other silly stuff that we can get into. But I had remembered seeing something. It was fairly recently. You guys did do a Royale show, or am I
Yeah,
dreaming?
July. We had one
Yeah.
just in July.
So I was like, oh yeah, that was good, and yeah, so that's what reminded me of that, and I thought, oh, this could be a fun conversation. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, Matt, for joining us. That's Matt Hartman, Esquire, and the Prince
It's
Prince
not,
of Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Jack, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, this is great. It's good talking to you. Thanks everyone for watching. That's it for this one. We'll see you again soon.